Go ahead and call the April 26, 2021 regular board meeting to order at 7 o'clock. So we can do roll call.
Terry's here.
Knut and Terry, okay.
Jeff's here.
Jeff's here.
Glenn is here.
Glenn is there, and Burl is here. And it looks like we have 4 public here. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So let me get the agenda up. That's the right one. Okay, so this is the agenda for tonight. So we have a motion pending to adopt the agenda. So we're going to do the minutes of the last 2 meetings, a regular and a special, usual committee reports. Old business is the RFP for the fuel system update. We need to discuss this gutter repair situation and review the procedure training and review process. New business consists of options for getting the taxi designation on Boeing. We've started to do some work on that. Possible content and scheduling of a public meeting for district financial issues. Electric golf cart support equipment update. The section 1.3 rules of order and 1.4 procurement had some comments as a result of the training we did the last 2 Mondays. So we need to vet those changes if we're going to incorporate them in the document. So that's it. Anything we significantly messed up or need to deal with? Otherwise, the motion is to adopt the agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay.
And a vote, I
We can do a
vote yea, yes.
Jeff, yay.
And Glenn?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
All right.
So let me pull up the minutes from the March 22nd regular meeting. Take just a second here as I maneuver around the unfamiliar computer. Get rid of this. All right, here we go. You should see something. Let me get it bigger. Got too much junk here. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. Here we go. So you should be seeing the minutes from March 22nd. So this is a regular meeting.
Do you have a chance to zoom in or full screen it or something?
Yeah. I can make it bigger.
Thank you.
I can make it a single page, but I think this is okay.
This is fine, yeah.
So we had a couple of meetings to discuss, to adopt. We had a finance report. We had the extensive airport manager report. I assume you guys are skimming through these, or I can move forward. There's quite a lot of minutes to this thing. We had an update from CSDA about their activities, particularly legislative, trying to get things going for some stimulus funds to the district. We had a thank you for the dinner and air show for getting the lights on. We had a brief update on cops and rodders. And Dave's rental car update and status. And then we did some unfunded activity discussion. It's an ongoing process. It's pretty well, he captures it very well. The discussion, there's a lot of discussion relating to budget and prioritization, and there's more work to be done there, but in the minutes, I think it captures what we talked about. We talked about the possible income that are legally able to be done by the district and the INF committee update. Obstruction mitigation is ongoing. We're not done. We've got at least one hostile tree that we need to deal with. No response from the letter by the owner, so we need to escalate that. That continues. The RFP went out to 6 companies. We'll wrap that up tonight probably. And then the initial discussion of this gutter repair issue by a resident was initiated at this point. We talked about timing for policy and procedure training, which was done at that point. We talked about multi-aircraft fee and the potential of that. We had a lot of good input and discussion on the wording specifically for that resolution. We tabled it. We did not adopt it. It needs further work, and there's probably legal challenges to adopting it at this point. We asked for whether resolution 88-8 that's been in existence since 1988 allows us to directly collect fees. And it was, yes, we can collect fees, but no, we cannot, because we are not in compliance with the financial support documents required to justify the fees. So that asked and answered that question. The board did not unanimously turned down the idea of another ballot measure, but the majority didn't see the point in pursuing another ballot measure that requires a 2/3 vote. Further worked on the airport vehicle proposal and budget requirements, and we did approve the 12K for the airport vehicle situation. And we have some help from one of the new residents, Jason, who was working on a donated vehicle to raise money or donating a vehicle directly to us. So did the minutes look good to me? Is there any other comments or changes we need to make? Because I have it in Word so I can play with it.
What is it? You're not allowed to send it out ahead of time. It's kind of a lot to digest.
Yeah, it should have gone out with the board. It's not supposed to be a public document until the board approves it, so it's a little messy.
All right. Yeah. Okay. No, I don't. No.
So if you want to postpone, we can postpone and review later. It just sits.
No, it's just
sits in limbo.
it's a lot to digest and approve.
Yeah. Great effort on our secretary.
Yes, absolutely.
This thing.
needs to get it done a little sooner.
So unless there's comments on that, we can go back to the agenda. And,
Is it
Well, I wasn't opposed to approving them, Pearl. It was more that.
no, I understand your. Now I have to find on this computer where I've got stuff. Sorry. And then I'll blow it back up. So we should be back to the agenda, hopefully. So we're at the point of motion to adopt the minutes. We just went through all 9 pages. If we want to delay or something for you guys to study it further, we can, or we can vote now. It's up to you.
This is Jeff. I'll move we approve the minutes.
Okay, I'll second that.
In a second, and I vote yes. I think they capture what happened.
Yes.
That's for me.
Terry
Yes.
votes yes.
All right.
Glenn?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard Glenn that time. So,
Okay, thanks, Glenn.
all right. So we'll head for the minutes from March 29. Wake them up first. Share, let's unshare. Interesting. So got this. Not getting back to Zoom the way I want to. There it is. Nope. Pardon me, I'm fiddling here. Still got part of it. I don't have the main address part for some reason. So let me get rid of these. Well, that sucks.
You can't find it?
Well, it's gone off on a tangent and not letting me back. It's giving me a post attendee page, so I'm going to kill that. Try to get back to the basics here. If I can't, I'll have to restart, unfortunately. Let me see. There we go. Sorry about that. My fault. Anyway, here we are for the March 29th special meeting, which was a budget review. Minutes, that's what should be up by now.
Yes.
So that was a discussion of the approval of the auditor's findings, which we approved. And we went through the current budget status and discussed modifications and corrections to that. At that time, we didn't know about the obstruction mitigation grant and other CARES Act processes, but we did approve a revised budget for 2021 at that point. We had a discussion of the possibility of residents to initiate a ballot measure independently of the board and the district. And that'll be the final word from the board on that subject, so we don't contaminate the process. We asked the Infrastructure and Finance Committee to look at street maintenance, which is the largest dollar figure unfunded item. And the recommendation from Dave Legal was that we do a pro forma operating budget without regard to the current situation. It's basically a blank sheet budget development. So we agreed that we would start thinking in that term. So those are the minutes from the special meeting on the 29th. So any comments, screw ups, major faux pas there?
Looks accurate to me. I move to approve the minutes.
Here, go back to see if I can successfully switch without going through all the billing around. So, okay, so we have a motion to adopt the minutes from Jeff. And I guess I would second it so we can move forward, so we can vote on the minutes from the March 29th meeting.
Aye.
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 And I agree, aye. So I think the yes is on that. Okay, on the committee reports. So finance report from Canute.
Okay.
Give us on that.
Sure. If you will let me share the screen.
And let me get out of this. Let me. So you can fiddle with share screen while I try to remember how to work it here.
Right. Hang on a second. All right, we'll start with the assessment district. Let me see, I can, and end of March, we are building up to the next payment, which will happen in September, which is about $72,000. As you can see, we are doing, we're just getting the big tax transfer happening here shortly from the county, so we should be fine. Now we actually see the CDs, the actual value. We have updated the online accounts with Eldorado Savings Bank, so now we can see what we are earning on the CDs we created. So the reserves are fine. We're supposed to have about 90,000 in reserve, so you can see that we've made, I think, at least a couple of thousand in interest over since we did that. So, and the reserve is supposed to pay off the last payment of the assessment district payment in 2029. So, any question on the assessment district? There's no real big movement in other than we pay our usual administration fee and the annual fee to the airport district for managing the assessment district.
Yeah. Where's the reserve fee at? I guess
The reserve is the reserve fund of 2,559 because we need a minimum balance in an account in order not to have fees on it. And then you have the 3 CDs, so that's the reserve.
Okay, so our minimum we required to have.
So the last 4 under the checking savings, you can see the last 4 lines there is. So this is the reserve right there.
Okay. So next, so you expect that we'll get the taxes from the tax transfers soon.
Yeah, so this is the one that needs to get above 70. I don't know the exact amount. I think it's about 72, which is the principal and interest payment. We have a payment in March as well, which is interest only, which is about 14,000. So yes, we have the taxes coming in from the county. It's just being transferred over the next day or 2, as far as I understand from Kevin's update.
Correct.
So I think everything is in order with the assessment district. I think we have, yeah, everything. I don't think there's anything outstanding to do here. So if there's no question on the assessment district, let's move on to the balance sheet for the port. So we have cash checking, we have 91,000. So we are expecting at least to get 13,000 from the county, or it's money that's sitting in the county for the airport district. And we have updated the airport reserve fund. We put half of the CARES money into that to save them for special projects or next fiscal year to help balance the budget in. And we made our payment of property taxes, the share we get of the property taxes, into the street funds for fiscal year 2021. So it's up to 35,000 now. So total checking and savings, we have 164. Accounts receivable is negative because we have people paying 3-month rent and hangar rent and tie down in advance. Accounts receivable gas, so that's the money we have sitting with Epic in our Epic's account, is about 60,000 at the end of March. And we just purchased gas at the beginning of April, so that took out about 32,000 for the gas purchase there. Other than that, our fixed assets, there's no major change. There's an increase for the tractor right here, which goes there. It doesn't go into the budget. It goes into the balance sheet. One thing to notice, which is kind of a red flag for the district, is that our total fixed asset has dropped from 2.2 million to 1.6 over not too long a period of time, which is an indication that we are not maintaining our infrastructure. So I think that's something to pay attention to going forward. So I don't know if there's any questions on the balance sheet, but looks pretty normal. So I'll move on to the budget versus actual. So the P&L statement here. In general, I think we are doing very well on the budget. There's some fluctuations. Again, the way the budget is represented is that it's the total budget for the year divided by the fraction of the month that we are currently representing. So we still got 3 months to go. So this is for 9 months out of the year, and they're evenly distributed across that. So that's why it sometimes looks off. For example, you can see that the Caltrans annual grant of 10K we have not received yet, so it still appears as minus 10,000 under the grant there. Other than that, I don't think there's any major outliers in the budget. I've gone through it and it looks reasonable to me. So far we look okay. So just note that anytime we get fixed assets, which is any expense for equipment over 2,500, it goes into the balance sheet. It does not appear in the budget. So I don't know if there's any. So the way we budget for this, that we need to have a net ordinary income, which is the amount of money we need to transfer to the street reserve fund every year, which is about 13,000. And so far we look okay for that. So any questions on the budget?
Looks good.
I think that's all I have then, Bill. So.
Okay.
Do we know if anybody's ever reapproached the county regarding that $13,000? My recollection or understanding is that's what was negotiated at the dawn of the district for the share of the street maintenance that the county would have carried otherwise. And obviously asphalt's a different price schedule these days. Have anybody that's been there recall this coming up in conversations past? Did they close the door on it?
I have.
Yeah, I have. It was discussed in the prior administration with no success, but I don't know how far they pushed it and with who.
When I tried to figure out how much money we need to transfer annually, I asked about it, and I forgot her name, but the lead of the accounting at the county, it's not the county that decides, it's the state that decides what special districts get. And we get a certain percentage of the pie from the 1%, and fire district gets some, and school district is supposed to get at least 25%. And so if you want more out of that pie, you have to take it away from other districts, and you can only do that if you negotiate it with it and if you have common interest. So if we can take it away from Cameron Park Community Services District, we could get more money, but they are probably not willing to give it up. So she told me that since she expected I called to get more money out of the 1%, she said it's not the county that decides what the portion is. That's decided by the state, I guess. of what the special districts get.
And I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
I guess,
about the only thing we can do there is pulse CSDA and see what they can do with their legislative stuff. That might be some of the things they're aware of, but it's unlikely any other district's going to admit they got a surplus and give it to us. So that's.
Canute,
again, so, yeah,
this is Phil. I have a question.
yeah,
And that was originally dedicated, that 13,000 taxes were at the level they were, and I think that's been for 20 years.
mm-hmm,
I'm sure that the tax base has increased substantially in the last 20 years, even though we would get the same percentage of funds that we were receiving back 20 years ago. That percentage should actually have went up on dollars.
yeah, you can actually find it on the county. They have every year in January, they determine the assessment basis for the property taxes, right? And then
Mhm.
based on that, they find out what our portion of that is. And it has gone up slightly, but not much. I think it was about maybe $12,000 some years ago. But
Well, I know that my property taxes have escalated substantially in the last 17, 18 years here. And I would think that others would have too. And every time a property sells, they reassess the property at, even with Proposition 13 numbers, 1%, and the
Right.
property, raising in value. I would think that even though that we would get the same percentage,
you should see more.
you should see more.
Yeah.
And I used to work for the government, like everybody knows, and I can double talk with the best of them. But I just can't see that we're getting the same amount we were 15 or 20 years ago, even though property values have increased so substantially.
Well, I have no data showing what we got 20 years ago. So I can go back 3 years is what I have. So if we can find other data, we can.
Well,
my understanding is it's not going to help much to go to the county, for they have all the documentation which is available online about what is the basis for their assessment. And then you can see the 1%. Maybe your property tax has gone up, but it's not because of the 1%, which is what we get to share of, right? Mine has actually gone down over the last years, I guess, but
mine hasn't.
okay.
But the thing is what I can't imagine that. I know that property has been sold and they reassess it at the current market value. So a property was assessed 15 years ago, and I know this is the same number they were touting 15 years ago, this 13,000. But the majority of the properties have resold in that 15 years, and the property valuations have increased substantially. Even if we're still getting the same 1%, when you're getting 1% of a larger pie, maybe we should get some more money. I don't know, just a thought. I'm not saying, I'm sure that you put a lot of effort into it. I'm just trying to, I know that things have become more valuable because of inflation. And if our piece of the pie, or our 13,000 or whatever they're giving us, hasn't increased with that same inflation rate, it'd be easy for them to tell us why not.
Looking at it, it seems the change is about a few $100s a year. So it's a very small percentage that we get out of the total pie there that they collect on the 1%. So I can certainly look into it more and give you some history on it. But again, that's the story, that it's based upon the assessment that the county uses for collecting their 1%.
Yeah, I think if you used $5,000 as just a number times 100 lots here, $5,000 a year in property tax times 100 lots here, I think that you'd have pretty good chunk of cash where I don't think they were getting that same amount 15 years ago from the same.
Well, we don't get the 1% of that chunk, right? We get
No, I know. But someone does. Someone does.
Well, the
And
county
so-
does, and then they have to distribute it to school district, fire districts,
Sure.
and whatever else you have.
Well, maybe the school districts grabbed some of the money that we maybe should have spoke up for back 10 years ago.
That I don't know. If it
Anyway,
did, then
just a
it's probably
thought.
been dictated from somewhere else, I guess. So,
Probably.
We'll
Somebody-
continue to look at it. Right now, the times we have asked our elected representative to help us, we've gotten nowhere. So we can try some more.
Yeah. Well, maybe Phil, one anecdotal evidence, when I talked to the county about it, they said that somebody ran for supervisor on the county board saying that they would bring more money to the fire district, but they can't do that because, again, it's the state that determines how
Sure.
the distribution of the money happens, right?
Well, maybe one of these days I can sit and go on in there, or maybe you and I could go in there and talk with them.
Sure.
Because I've never found, dealing with the state or any type of government entity, that the first time you go in there and ask for something, they want to try and help you.
Right.
It takes multiple trips with a little bit of arm twisting, and for you to take and be persistent. And sometimes you'll get something, sometimes you won't.
Okay. Well, as Pearl says, we can keep trying.
Okay, any other financial stuff for this meeting?
Nothing else here.
All right. Okay, airport manager, do you want to bring your report up? I have it if you want to bring it up, or you can just talk to it, your choice.
Yeah, if you want to bring it, I'll just talk to it. There's plenty of stuff in here for the interested reader on the plates that we're spinning. Tenant status, we remain good. We've had a couple of folks in and out of the tie down farm in March, April, early April. And as with the hangars, we have a list of people standing by to come into them. The tie down list is much shorter than the hangar list, but for the time being, there won't be any interruption in our revenue from the tie down spots. One of the projects that I've been working on and off is to try to get everybody's current insurance certificates back on file with the office. This was something that the El Dorado County airports got whacked in the shins with during their last grand jury assessment, which happened just, I think, 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. And that was just, kind of apathy around that particular task. And most of our tenants have been really good about it. And it takes a week or so for the insurance companies to issue those. I'm going to have a couple with almost derelict aircraft that, we're kind of that point with all the other priority work going on, that there's time to focus on bringing people into alignment with their terms and provisions of their contract. So there might be some actions that are going to need to be taken here. So there'll be more talking about that, behind the scenes. But otherwise, things are going well over on the office side. Fuel system continues to have its bad behavior with pressurization. And the RFP for just kind of a feasibility study of the placing an above ground fuel system over there. We've gratuitously asked the subject matter experts when they're visiting, what do you think about these issues, these gremlins that we're seeing in the fuel system with it not pressurizing, timing out on the point of sale system and that sort of thing that, really has been going on for many years. And we've had a number of different technicians look at it. And, each one of these SMEs have their own ideas on where it may be. And with something that's as old as that system, my troubleshooting instinct tells me it's you pull all of that hardware out of there, all the sensors and the switches and the solenoids, and try to do it by deduction to see if you can figure it out. But that's pretty darn expensive. So we've been getting by with that. But just as an example, every time one of those episodes happens, you think of it with a hotel room when you use your credit card, or a rental car where you check in, and for that particular transaction, your room rate for the night might, let's just say it's $100, but they're going to clear $200 in case you order something from room service. You have an amenity at the mini bar or something like that, so they're charging a higher rate. So what I get the regular call from is somebody that has one of those no fuel pressure experiences at the system. and they check their online credit card bill and they've got 3 attempts at $200 each that eventually work themselves out. They all clear, but it's a bit of an annoyance for some of these guys that come in and buy 50 gallons of gas, and it culminates in a $800 hold on their card for the better part of a week. So another input to that. But as you'll see, if you get a chance to look at this with the table of fuel sales, it hasn't kept them from buying gas, that's for sure. We're on course to sell about 4,500 gallons of gas in April alone, following 3,750 in or 3,500 rather in March. So COVID's here in Cameron Park, but nobody's telling the pilots, so we're burning fuel.
We should probably update on the results of the inspection today. Today's the every 3-year secondary containment inspection, and they inspect 10 areas. 1 failed, so we have work to do, but it's not as bad as it could be. It's one of the sumps around the one of the manhole sumps leaks, and will have to be cleaned from the inside out and then resealed, and/or we have a perforated conduit penetration into it or something like that. It happens to be the same one in their memory that failed 3 years ago. We weren't aware of that. Since then, we have fixed several other areas, but it wasn't this area. So this is a recurring failure of this to pass the test. The good news is the interstitial space between the tanks and the primary piping passed, so we don't have to dig anything up, which would pretty much end our fuel business for the time being. So this can be fixed on the fly. The report will come in, we'll initiate the repairs and have to bring out the whole gang to do a retest of that 1 sump, but not as bad as it potentially could be. Apparently this one has failed before. So
did we get a pass, or do we have a pending action that we have to have them?
We're going to get a fail on the report that we have to fix this. I don't know what the timing is. It's not a pass. We're allowed to resume fuel operations at this point, but we have to fix it. The other concern that we got from the testing company was that our normal contractor is like 6-8 months out before he can get to anything and is refusing work. So we may be in the unfortunate mode of trying to find an alternate contractor to do the repairs.
Is that Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay, I do have 2 other ones that I've put together as backup, so I'll get on reaching out to them.
Yeah, but I think we know which one it is, so we don't have to wait for the report, because they're running late on the reports. We could initiate the process of getting prices and what they want to do to it.
Okay. All right, on me. So just picking up page 3 in the report there, we similar to the fuel system inspection, we had the 4-month rather AWAS inspection completed. The Sac Valley Alarm's been our provider for fire alarm services as long as I can remember here. And they come out and they take their check from us to come out and run a circuit test, and away they go. They've made me aware of wireless systems that have the sensors inside the hangars just ping to the box inside the fuel shed, and that the wiring that's in each of the hangars has been a gremlin as well for faults, and those are for those of us on the call list. That's generally why we're getting called at the odd hours, is there's water in the trays or something up there. Unfortunately, Sac Valley Alarm never answers my calls about, hey, tell me about your new system. So Chuck next door, I think he uses El Dorado County Alarm and a couple others. So I'm going to reach out to see if somebody else has to be representing these vendors for a little upgrade to the system, so we can see what that costs. Something that I'm hoping can go forward. I was in conversation with Mike Bigler and mostly with Charlie. Langdon, that is, Charlie has a legacy fence from his business that's a 6-foot chain link rail fence, similar to what we have at the Miraloma main gate. And we're trying to figure out if we can, if it's plausible to put that a little bit further down the midfield driveway from Cameron Park Drive down to the tie down area and automate that gate, which would help a lot with the incredible amount of high-speed traffic that we have at the Nuremberg ring coming around my office door and out onto the straight of the runway or the taxiway. So we'll see. That would also present or provide another Knox opening for EMS or fire to get out onto the surface. I will hold off on the rest for reading up, but just to touch on the taxiway marking on Boeing. This, of course, has been on our hit list since the dreaded December 2018 adverse finding list from Caltrans, but it's the inspector's kind of backed off and he's lightened up on that particular topic in terms of urgency. He's got his heels dug in that it has to be done, but I think interpreting Mr. Brooks over the last 18 to 24 months, he's quite happy with the work that has been done in terms of obstructions. I think he now takes us for our word that we're going to get stuff done. So we've got time to get this taxiway done. But in the last 10 days, I've had 2 guys out that are in either type 2 ag seal coating or slurry seal. And the first chap doesn't do type 2 ag, and he listened to what I said needed to be done, told him about how the X has reappeared after just 2 years of after the original slurry seal to black it out. And he said, well, what you probably really need and want for longevity is the type 2 ag. So he recommended somebody that he's not affiliated with, and that gentleman came out. And long story short, their mobilization cost just to come out with their crews about $15,000. So I listened to him, showed him some other cracks that needed to be dealt with around the ramp and the tarmac, but he went on his way. So within our budget, I think we're back to self-grinding. Jeff, last time we were on the line together, had looked real quick and found a grinder locally, a couple of places where we could do that. And then I think hopefully we can set the thing to where we just shave off the thermal tape that went down and not do much damage to the asphalt itself. Get that done, get a quality seal coat, and that'll buy us some time. The downside to this is that it's only going to last so long, and the expense for us is not in the seal coat, it's in the darn 4 letters of taxi to have that put down. Those 2 instances of the 4 letters is anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 a pop. So budget item until we can find a way to get it in there under the guise of like the next time we do major repairs to the streets or upgrades. Any questions on that as I keep rattling through here? I'm almost done.
Kevin, what's the size of the letters that are required?
They're about 80 feet vertical, Phil. They're just big ass letters. And it's a actually, Burl, you could probably speak to this better. They give you a standard size, but then my understanding is you then scale the size of the surface that you're working.
Yeah, they give you, the FAA has a minimum size, and if it turns out that it's 85 feet wide by, I think, 65 feet tall is the minimum size. Because we have 100-foot streets, we would go the 100-foot width by about 75 feet tall to comply with FAA requirements. I guess, we haven't really talked about do it yourself, but the concerns are if we had somebody come and do it, it's going to be straight, it's going to be consistent and uniform. If we go out there and do our best effort, it's hard to say how it's going to turn out. So we're still kind of pushing let's see if we can find somebody to help us do it kind of thing. I know Phil and I have talked, and he has brought up the seal coat option quite a bit. So it might be we have to do a mix of things. This is a later agenda item, but I think for the moment, we need to show progress prior to the next inspection. The primary thing we need to do by next inspection is get rid of these hostile owners' trees again. And I think if we rented a grinder and took care of the grinding and obliterated the X and got prep work done and showed that we're working towards it, I think that's satisfactory for the moment, even though we don't get it done. But we can talk about that under new business. So I'm kind of planting the seeds for the new business discussion, but yeah.
From my list, the last thing I'll just mention then is I think through the Infrastructure and Finance Committee, I will recommend the new CPA firm to them, and then they can make the recommendation to the board. I think at the next meeting, the company is Robert Johnson CPA. They're out of Gold River. They were recommended by the Cameron Park Equestrian Estates as I put feelers out to find other qualified audit firms that deal with special districts, and they got high marks. And they were the ones that really communicated. I liked interfacing with them more than anybody else. And then finally, they, relative to our current firm, which I really don't have any gripes with, I think Mr. Bain did and his team did a fine job, but they can, the new firm would save us about $4,000 over a 2-year cycle. So it's a considerable savings. And now that the individual tax season is over and the heat's off them for that, we can engage and get them going here pretty soon. So I'll pause there at my usual advertisement. Burl, thanks for posting this for me to the website. You know, all the narrative and my long-winded discussion is there for you to see. I invite you to send me emails or call me with questions.
Okay. Anything else for the airport manager at this point? Update on procurement and contracts. As you recall, in the minutes, we approved an airport vehicle purchase last board meeting. Well, we've since made that purchase. We're under the budget amount, and we also are online to have a vehicle donated at no cost to us. So we'll satisfy both the need for a utility on airport vehicle and an on and off airport vehicle, both under that same approved budget amount. So that's a great success. And once the donation comes through, we'll clarify who's doing that. Turns out the gentleman doesn't even have an airplane, but he likes living here and likes what we're doing. So he's donating basically a 3 1/4 ton rated pickup, as far as I know, at no cost to us. So we took that opportunity, knowing that's coming, to purchase a new utility vehicle that we can use to tow the mower general purpose around here. And it will replace the golf cart, which is continually failing more frequently and is unable to do the tasks that we need to do with it. So,
well, actually, now that it's for sale, Burl, it's a really nice golf cart. Somebody would really like to have that golf cart.
yeah, it's cleaned and polished and perfect condition. Yeah,
That's right.
so it'll go on the surplus list, and we'll see if we can disperse it to somebody. The Charger is outstanding. It's only about 6 months old, so it's worth the Charger price. The other contracts we haven't done yet, we'll talk about that when we get further on for the RFP, if we're going to go proceed with that. But that's currently where we're at with the unusual procurements and/or any contracts. Volunteer service, we're in the range of 140 hours for April. Terry Boland did a big chunk of that with his efforts to finish the installation of the residential gate on the south end. It was never finished. As you may recall, it had a big gap in the middle. Well, that's all done now. There's no longer a gap. It has the protective switches in it, so it won't squish you if you happen to be trying to cheat through there. So he's been working diligently on that, and the other hours are basically support of the manager in quite a wide variety of different activities. And that's where we're at with volunteers for April.
Just
The
the North Gate will be done soon.
yeah, Northgate's yeah. We do. All right, public forum, public comment. Anything from the public? We have a few of you out there. I think you're still out there. Okay.
One quick question, the two vehicles that we're gonna have, neither one of those are gonna be roadworthy?
No, the pickup is roadworthy. It's licensed in California to be roadworthy.
Okay,
So that'll be, so instead of depending on borrowing one or using the airport manager's personal vehicle, we'll have a vehicle that can go on the highway for those occasions that we need to.
and that's not gonna increase our insurance premiums whatsoever, or?
Not really, no. I think Kevin's looking into that. We already pay for a liability for a vehicle, so.
No, there will be a insurance for that vehicle, Phil. The insurance that we have right now are for my car. It's not for a airport owned machine. So the question that's out to our providers, and I'm actually going to have a couple other companies just bid on it to get the best rate. There's no reason we have to go with AvQuest to insure a pickup truck, but it's the machine is a 1988 or so. It's the GMC equivalent of an F-250. So what's that, a 2500?
Yeah.
But the short story of it is that if we only have to insure it for liability as opposed to collision, then it's going to be cheaper. If we're not too proud to drive it with a bent fender, if that happens, then we can save that money. But we will have an incremental insurance cost of maybe upwards of $100 a month or something like that, I would think.
Yeah, I was just curious. And then probably you can license it as an e-vehicle, an exempt vehicle.
That's correct.
License
Correct,
fees.
yeah, we're working on that too.
And that's pretty easy. The only other thing will be is the maintenance and the smog fee every 2 years. Even an e-vehicle has to be smogged.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, does that mean we need a sign on the door, Cameron Park Airport?
Well,
It depends on who's throwing the eggs.
yeah. Who's throwing the eggs and which bar you find it parked in front of. So we got to be a little careful.
Yeah, usually they have to put some type of door sticker on and official use only and those kind of things.
We can do that. We'll see what they ask us to do. Yeah.
It'll live longer if we do that.
Yeah.
But as you said, we already carry insurance for third-party vehicles, right? Because Gary would borrow cars from tenants at the airport to do airport business, right, and things like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and we may, well, I think as Kevin said, he's looking at the whole insurance picture because the third-party vehicles may shrink or
Right.
be unnecessary after this move. And I think it sets us up for what we should have been doing for a long time, is have an airport vehicle. So. Okay, thanks, Phil. Anything else out there? All right.
Well, you know what? Let me just throw out there to clean up, because it dovetails in with something that's been on the Knut's budget and all this stuff for a while. But the in-kind compensation to CAL FIRE, they called in their markers over the last couple of weeks for our outstanding balance with them. They typically give us a list of some tools or other things that is a bit of a pain in the neck for them to get a hold of through CAL FIRE procurement. And so we've taken care of that. We've got pretty close to a zero balance with them now. So, heading into the summer and the new fiscal year, we should be, within a $100 of, not having a pending balance with those folks. So that's a good deal.
Great, thank you.
Okay, old business is the ongoing, the RFP for the fuel system. We put out an RFP to 6 companies. We got 1 response. The response was way over our budget. In discussions with them, they went much further in detailed design and development of CAD drawings than we were envisioning. So subsequently to that, we renegotiated with them from a 23,000 plus estimate to 5,850, which is essentially in line with the 5,000 estimated for it. And they're a very competent company. They've been doing fuel systems all over California. They're an aviation consortium. They're local. They're Sacramento, and actually the planner lives in El Dorado Hills. So they've all been by to visit. They seem very motivated to help us without taking us to the cleaners as far as finances. And so my suggestion is that the board approves a bump up of the $850 so we can award to them their renegotiated or revised scope that took out the extra stuff that we really didn't need, such as CAD drawings and that sort of thing. We basically are asking where we can put this tank, what other ramifications occur, give us a project schedule, give us a project estimated price, and some technical details on other issues we might run into, and that's it. So I think that's a fair price for what they're going to give us. And they offered that they would go to the various regulating agencies, get the straight scoop, and process that information into a report to us. So I think it gives us an opportunity we've been trying to get to know how to move forward with this thing, and then the details of the actual package, new versus used and all that stuff. At least we'll know a sighting and what we can do with this thing. Or if it's going to be a problem, the big issue with it is the distances from property lines that you can put in a fuel tank. The existing buried tanks are about 30 feet from the property line, and that would be an ideal spot to drop a new tank. But we're trying to avoid that because it's going to be a significant amount of time scheduling wise in order to have these tanks removed, the ground certified, retested, go through all that fiddling around, and before you could start construction, if you need that space for the new tank, for the above ground tank. So the idea is to find a location within that general area for the above ground tank, so we don't have to dig up the other ones first in order to place it. So that's basically the game we're playing, and they're willing to run this to ground and get some definitive answers that we can use in support of our position when we move forward. Also, we'll have a current price to target for our fundraising efforts. So I'm proposing the motion to bump the estimate. We had approved 5,000, and I think 5,850 is within the range considering what all we're going to get for it. So I'm proposing the motion to proceed with the award.
Just a question, Earl, did they give a time frame when they think that the study would be completed?
4 weeks. Their schedule's 4 weeks from award. Is they will go ahead and give us our report.
Well, I would like to second that motion.
So we have a motion and seconded, and then we can take a roll call for it.
Carrie is yes, or aye.
Okay.
Knut is aye.
Glenn is aye.
Okay, and I'm aye,
Jeff's aye.
and Jeff's aye. Okay, we'll process the award letter and get it to them tomorrow. I believe it's pay on completion. So we won't see the money for a little while. Now for the interesting topic for the evening. I sent the board some homework regarding this residential gutter request. Gotta get to it. I'll put the whole thing up. So the situation is, we had a resident on Fairway send an email with some photographs of their concern about the gutter in front of their property depressing below the asphalt and also on the street side, and then also below the slab of their, I guess it's part of the driveway in the front of their property. And here's a side view of what we were sent. He went ahead and got a full fix-it estimate, which involved removing the gutter, removing some of the asphalt, digging it down, recompacting, building it up, putting a new concrete gutter in, and repaving the portion of the street removed to get access to do the undertamping. That's a value or an estimate of $10,200. And so that's what they're asking us to deal with. He also in the email mentioned hazard, trip hazard, et cetera, for these lips. So that was a while back. That was in January. So we've kind of been fiddling around with it, but we have several questions to answer as the board. So I'm going to ask the questions and let the board figure out what they want to do. First things, is this a hazard? The way the codes read for trip hazards is it has to be a walking surface, and it's not clear whether a transition from the street to the edge of the driveway is considered a walking surface or not.
Earl, I don't know if you know this, but some of the screen has went to a leader in 2020 Gardner Magic Quadrant for meeting solutions.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
No.
I see the questions on my
I
screen.
don't see it here anymore, so maybe we'll try read the report.
So you don't see, I'm screen sharing, you don't see that?
Nope, I Zoom a leader in 2020 Gardner Magic Quadrant for meeting solutions.
You may have locked up. I see the list of questions Burl's referring to.
Yeah, I see board homework at the top.
Let me try and go backwards. Excuse me, I'm
See if
sorry.
it'll clear up. So the first question, is this a hazard? The other part of it, is it an erosion issue related to the failure of the gutter, et cetera, and then is it a liability for the district? Is it a liability for the property owner? And as I mentioned, the cost to R&R this gutter in a full sense is $10,200, which, you know, we could argue that we could get rebids on that, but I think the principle is it appropriate to remove and replace the gutter? So I did a little research and talked to El Dorado County Building. Does not require a permit from them for driveway flat work, so they have no involvement in this sort of activity. County DOT requirements do have stipulations related to driveways and asphalt connections versus concrete connections, but none of that applies to non-county maintained roads, which is ours. The only time El Dorado County Building is concerned if it's developing a fire access to a property, or it requires grading, like it's up a side of a hill or something, then they get involved. But a typical driveway flat work like this driveway, they would have no involvement. And because it's not a non-county maintained road, DOT doesn't have any direct involvement. So one of the questions is, does the district need something to manage this sort of thing? Because this driveway is not that old, and it's potentially that the height of the driveway was a little high to start with and was not picked up by any of these kind of oversight things, because there isn't any. Whether that's part of the problem or not, I'm throwing out there. And then what are the alternate solutions if replacement's not warranted? And the typical solutions for offsets is they grind them until they match. Sometimes it's acceptable to put a contrasting color or reflective surface on them to identify them as an offset. So it's now up to the board to figure out what you all want to do. It's just, hopefully y'all got a chance to go out and take a look at it.
I went on and took a look at it. And I did some measurements and took some pictures. And the most amount of separation, or the delta between the driveway and is where he parks equipment kind of in front of his garage, as it faces the street. What I noted was where the driveway that apparently he poured was installed. There's some kind of concrete flanges where it looks like the gutter used to be at, but subsequently sank. Now that could be some other issue with the forms and the way the concrete was saying.
That's, I think,
I only noticed that area. This is on the driveway, not the street side, but I only noticed it was primarily in front of, that area in front of the driveway. When you go to the other side where cars primarily drive, it didn't have that type of separation. But it looks like the driveway was poured, already high, as you kind of mentioned. But your question, is this a hazard? Yeah, potentially if somebody's walking there at night, they could trip, particularly on the driveway side. Liability for the district, is it my thoughts that potentially, yeah, but there's also the case where the driveway was already appears to be poured higher than the gutter was at that time. And I believe that's the case just because the way the edge of the driveway is rounded. It wasn't poured flush with the gutter at the time. And also, I didn't notice any other type of displacement happening along the same side of the street or fairway. It's only in this one particular place we're getting the greatest, distancing, whether that's the gutter kind of sinking down on one side or so forth. But I think there's kind of maybe a shared kind of position here where perhaps, but only where the driveway was poured too high above the gutter, and maybe the gutter subsequently sank a little bit because of the heavy equipment or trucks driving in that area and parking there. But at the same time, kind of as a question, I don't think there's an answer to this. What are the gutters rated at for weight crossing that gutter? I mean, our normal cars seem to handle it okay. Obviously, the airplanes. The gutters are old and been in there a long time. There's been some earth movement, but this one is particularly quite a bit and seemed to happen fairly quickly. I don't know when the driveway was put in, but it looks like some of the depression has happened since that driveway was put in. So I put it, I don't think that's entirely our responsibility. Now, to your other point, Burl, I just add in, yeah, we do need a policy. We need to mitigate or at least a control, or be able to have a discussion with the property owner when they're thinking about doing driveway work to verify that there's no, excessive height above the gutter.
Yeah, this is because all the new driveways that have been put in blend and they follow the gutter, even though the gutter is not straight. And that seems to not create this issue at the other properties that have been recently put in. So.
They say, you look at this particular driveway on the north side of it, it was angled up from a flush area to a higher area above the driveway. So it looks like it was some intention that it was put above the gutter.
Yep.
And maybe the solution is a grinding that on the driveway side to bring it down.
This is Jeff. My thoughts. I did the golf cart tour of the gutters around the neighborhood as well. I didn't see anything other than that one that appeared to be a problem. I have a hard time going with the full Monty, dig it up, retamp it, start in $10,000 a pop. Not only does it set a precedent that we can't afford, but I think in our current financial state, we have more viable options that we can afford. And I think grinding and, you know, I'll use a painter's term of caulking those cracks with sealant of some sort, would probably be a more plausible alternative. Short of that, you know, if it is a hazard, we can red paint and put some tape up there, and, you know, and a cone, and, you know, just to mitigate, you know, the liability, I guess, for the district. Because if it's a known hazard, I don't think we can do nothing.
Yeah, and I'd say I agree with you, Jeff. The issue I kind of struggle with, it looks like that the hazard was at least partly created, or maybe potentially fully created, you know, by the homeowner pouring that driveway above the height of the gutter to begin with. And I suspicion is the gutter may have been depressed a little bit, because I know, you know, that area, there is some heavy trailers and heavy trucks parked on that driveway, and the act of crossing over may have overloaded the gutter and caused it to go down. Because it only seems that one area, the other driveway side is fine. You know, there is a depression on the other part, but that's also a new part of the driveway.
Yeah.
And I don't think had, you know, consistent heavy stuff been going over it. So I think, you know, there is kind of a hazard. It is sitting high, but it's a driveway.
Does anybody know when the driveway was put in?
It's not been that long. I don't have an exact date. No.
Current owner or past owner?
After this house was purchased, it was put in.
So the current owner has put it in.
Yes, that's my understanding from what we know. Because
So
prior to the current owner, it was a landscaped area with a couple of trees in it, and so this was added by the current owner. Whether it was done by the current owner or by contractor, I do not know any of that.
So what you're saying is possibly the current owner has caused his own issue.
As far as the height of the driveway, I think, yeah. As far as the displacement on the street side, that's unknown, you know, where the asphalt is.
Asking the air park to take and mitigate an issue he created, I think would be asking a lot.
Yeah, it's worth a try.
Well, that may be the thought, but I mean, if you've created a hazard and asking someone else to take care of the hazard you created, especially when it appears that from everybody's view that the gutter has not sunk substantially, and if any sinking has occurred, it may be the current owner driving heavy vehicles across the area. I don't know how the board would be responsible, or the district, actually.
Yeah, yeah, we have to, yeah. It'd be super ideal if we could replace all the gutters I described, but obviously that's won't happen.
Well, I think here's my 50 cents worth now that you guys have chewed on it, which is what I wanted to do. Is I think we need to send a letter back to the requester. I agree, there's no point in expending this amount of money for a complete gutter redo. I don't see any reason for that. The independent experts that I'm aware of that have looked at it said the gutter's not settling. They don't settle in a uniform manner over this length of the distance. They'll settle, make like a pothole. So they kind of discounted the theory that it's settling on its own, so to speak. And they're 9 times out of 10, the solution for all these cities, if you look at the sidewalks, is they grind them. So the question of who pays for the grinding or whatever, we don't have a price on that. You can rent that stuff. I don't know how good it would look after our volunteer force worked on it for a while, but maybe a suggestion would be to get a cost for seal that crack on the street, on the pavement side, which probably should be done anyway. The usual, like our hot asphalt seal like they did on the rest of the streets. And then grinding. And then the question is who pays or whether it's a shared cost. So I think it's on the district for the crack sealing part. And I think it needs to be a shared or negotiated deal for the grinding side. If the owner refuses to accept grinding, then we got to go the next, wherever we go from there. So my suggestion is the board ends up sending a letter to the resident saying, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to support replacement unless you want to pay for it. We'll let you. But our recommendation is crack seal, which the district will do on this between the asphalt and the old gutter, and grind that edge to match the gutter. Would be one way to approach it. So, you guys let me know what you want to do.
Yeah, I think that sending a letter as approach is seeing where the closest I think we have responsibility is on the street side. And I still think that part of the depression there between the street side and the gutter is just driving heavy equipment over, which also depressed the other side. I think we potentially could, grind down that short strip of the asphalt, if asphalt can be, grind the asphalt down to match it. But the driveway, I think, is the owner's side. Clearly, the pictures show that when you take a look at it, that's raised above the gutter side by just virtue of the fact that he made a ramp that to raise that part of the driveway up.
Yeah, it's not shown in this picture, but to this end, there's actually a tapered surface that takes it back down to the height of the gutter at the neighbor's property.
Yeah, and if you look at that picture is in there, you can see the concrete kind of flange, a little lip of concrete. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
I believe, again, I'm not a pavement expert, but that looks like where the gutter was originally, where the form was, and it kind of, they get that little concrete spills under there, because the upper edge of that driveway is rounded.
Mm-hmm.
If it seems to me, if it was poured flush, you wouldn't have a rounded edge, it'd be a sharp edge.
Right. Yeah, I think it was poured to this height or even where it's at now.
And it sank. In fact, that black mark almost looks like tire tracks as I'm going over it. That not unusual. But.
Anyway, that's one approach. Is I think we need to respond. The other thing to do is if you want to spend some legal money, we get an actual legal determination on this, and these are tricky. Based on my limited experience with if you had a sidewalk or a designated walkway, the current law says you can't have more than a 1/4 inch offset or you're potentially creating a trip hazard. But I don't know as this constitutes a designated walking surface. See, that's the part I don't know. So we could spend some legal money and get an answer, but that's not moving forward in the solution particularly. So that's another thing to consider for you guys.
I think that you'll find with most commercial driveways, there is a offset from the gutter up into the driveway.
Yeah, there's about a 1/2 or 3/4 inch offset when you go up the typical driveway.
Right, it isn't a smooth transition. There usually is an offset, and I don't know, from what you're showing there, it almost looks like it falls within that category. In other words, you're pulling the Safeway from the street, that driveway that you're going into their establishment or one of the other establishments, it isn't a smooth transition from the gutter into their driveway. There's usually,
I agree, there's usually a
step up.
Little step up. Yeah.
And the reason for that is so when water goes down the gutter, it doesn't go and
just run off here randomly. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I would go with what Jeff and Terry said, that we send a letter that we should come up with a solution that mitigates the risk, I guess. So be that grinding or painting, but I don't think it would be responsible for the board to spend 1/3 of our road funds on one gutter, I guess. And
Yeah.
the
and-
amount asked for here is about what each property paid to complete resurface the street in 2009, if it was paid up front.
Yeah, there's a question of whether that's too high or not, but it's a comprehensive solution, so.
Right.
Yep.
I think the letter, as you outlined, Burl, I think is the way we can go now, and that's,
Yeah. And then make a policy going forward, I
Right.
guess.
All right.
and that policy would, maybe we can talk, obviously talk about board, the policy, not only talk about the height difference, but also some type of statement about the weight that's going to cross that.
Yeah, we could talk about that. The other thing, the problem we have is in that policy, we have to figure out what triggers that and how is it done, because right now, the only people that know anything about construction of any kind out here is Cameron Park. If it's triggers architectural review, and county if it triggers a permit. Now, neither one of those would apply for this kind of stuff. So we have to figure out a way also to know when somebody's up to something, so to speak. And I'm not sure the answer to that, but that can be part of the process. Otherwise, yeah, the weight bearing is part of it.
When you build new construction here in this area, I know that we don't follow it here in the air park, but the first 10 feet of driveway on a private property have to be asphalt. And the reason they want that is for snow plowing. I know
Yeah,
it's-
that's embedded in those DOT requirements that they
Exactly.
obey on county maintained roads, but you know, again, we can, in the policy we can choose to adopt something, whatever that might be, but we also need to think in terms of processes. How are we going to get people, how are we going to know somebody's busting up and doing the driveway, that kind of things. Food for thought. So I guess to proceed, we'll draft a letter in response. I guess if the consensus is that we're going to end up grinding it, we should probably get an estimate for that. We can rent grinders, but I'm not sure how successful that'd be in being nice and straight and all that sort of thing. So we can consider that, but
Doing work on private property sometimes is not a very smart idea for the
for
business.
us, doesn't
Yes,
get
to get
involved
involved.
in, yes, I agree.
Yeah, I'd say, I think the grinding for the driveway side should be with the owner, and the district would look at grinding on the street side.
And is it an acceptable option to the board to just paint that lip, like a yellow caution color, or would that be an acceptable solution to the board as an option?
On the street side or the driveway side?
Driveway side.
Should paint both sides.
Doing any work again on private property, once you've done that, you've taken possession of it or you've taken responsibility for it.
Well, we leave the option to the
Doing
owner.
that.
Yeah, I think we leave the option to the owner. We could paint the yellow stripe on the street side. I'd agree. To see what our legal would weigh in. But I would agree with Phil. It seems as soon as we put a solution on the private owner side, we've.
You own it.
So I guess where we're leaning is that the district would take on dealing with the crack on the street side, and it's the owner's responsibility to abate the problem either by proper safety color or grind it off. That's kind of
Right.
what I'm hearing.
I'd be curious to what our council would, if there's an opinion.
I don't know if he's listening.
presented.
Well, we can formally ask him to review. I think we need to formally ask him to review this, given the sensitivity and the fact we're dealing with a resident and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get the letter drafted. We will pass it by our legal counsel. If he wants to charge us something for that, that's okay. And then he can weigh into the our options or legalities associated with directing a resident what he needs to do, something like that, I think is what we're saying.
Right.
For a second opinion, you may just contact the DOT.
We have the input from DOT.
Well, just asking them what they would do.
They would grind it off or mandate that it's ground off.
Because they'll answer, they'll give you some answer for free. In other words,
That's what they said they would do, is they would take care of it that way. They certainly wouldn't take it all out and replace it 100%, which is what was.
No. Well, especially if the resident is the one that caused the issue.
It kind of smells that way, yeah. So I will draft this letter up and we will pass it by our legal to take a look at, and then we'll stipulate that the owner has a problem. He needs to either mark that edge or grind it back, and we will deal with the street side by dealing with that and filling in that gap. Does that sound kind of like where we're headed?
Yes.
Okay,
Agreed.
all right. I like it. Let's see, should be back to the agenda, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I hit the buttons in the right order. So the next thing is we did the district policy procedure training, had essentially 0 attendance. We had 3 people each time. So I don't really think it got a whole lot of traction as far as, admittedly, it's not the most interesting subject. But another big chunk of work needs to be done to review the airport access and aircraft procedures. So we need to think about how to up the people that want to participate in that. Embedded in the airport access procedures and stuff is a requirement that people read this, our aircraft policy and procedure. That used to be a little pamphlet that they used to sell for $1. So I think we somehow need to maybe set aside some time and effort and publish this in a hard copy and drop it on everybody's porch, and some mechanism have a way to then have a Zoom meeting to walk through it, because there's several things in here that the aircraft procedures are recommendations. We can't do a whole lot about that, but we can train people about displaced thresholds. We can talk about that other stuff. The airport access and working on the airport, we're not now following our own policy as far as pre-work safety checks, tool returns and condition, and updating all of these release of liability forms. We haven't done that. So there's some key things there. So this maybe is 2 parts or 1 part, but I'm open to ideas on how to get some more traction on this and see what we can do.
Well, printing 1 copy for everybody would seem like that would get kind of expensive.
It would be.
But it would get people's attention if it was on their front porch.
Yeah, and then immediately into the recycle bin.
Or probably half of them. I mean, if we're going to do it, it seems that of course, would precede a formal, formal review.
Yeah.
And I'm
Well,
wondering,
we can try another, we can make an announcement. We can make several preemptive announcements and emphasize that we're talking about those categories and see if more people show up to a Zoom. I mean, it's not a lot to create a Zoom, and then see what happens from there.
I think that would be good, and we can. I think we mentioned this maybe last meeting. Put up the sign in front of the Oxford gate. That tends to work well in getting people's attention.
Yeah.
And mail, and in advance of that, mail out a PDF of the policy, which would have less openings than a hardcover.
Okay.
But That's what you,
Whatever, yeah, I don't, whatever we can do.
Would it be something to include in the public meeting you're gonna talk about later?
I think it's a separate public meeting. This is more of
Okay.
more of an information on how you're supposed to do stuff. Because for example, airport access requires you wear a reflective vest and have a working two-way radio and report before you cross the runway transition lines. And and essentially nobody does that. So we got to get people aware that that's what you're supposed to do and then start trying to work that, And I think it goes along with the discussion last time of this is a real public airport. This is not an air park or a neighborhood airport or something. This is a real airport, so you should treat it the same. I think that goes along with that.
agree.
So we'll figure out something and come up with a schedule and go from there, Okay. But think about it. If you think of a better, brighter idea, let me know. We can print some stuff up and sell them. That's what they used to do.
Well, when they made that last edition way back when, I'm sure they had to find somebody with the printing capabilities. That printer that's in the office is pretty capable.
They used to make them in 1989. They sold them for $1 and it was only about 1/10 of what's in this one. So
Oh, okay.
make up our budget that way.
What do you think about in the one that you sent out over the email, just put a box on the bottom that has a check mark, say, I've read and understood the rules, and then place for you to put your name and then say, please send it back to me. And that way you can cut down on having to distribute hard copies. If people say they've read it, they understand it, and then you have a copy of what they've said to put in a file.
Yeah, we can try that and see what we do. Sure.
Because if 50 people send it back, that's 50 less you have to send out.
Less we have to chase down. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Kevin, is there a way you can do that on the email that you send out, like fuel unavailable when you send it out? Is there a way you can do a survey there and have that check marks on there?
Yeah, we can track that, I think, or they can do a return. So we'll look into doing that. That's a good idea. That way they're supposed to know the rules after they've checked that box. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
And it should also go out to the flight school, the other tenants on the east
Yeah,
side.
it goes out to everybody, the tenants and the residents, everybody, just for information, if nothing else. Yeah. Anybody wandering around on this airport should have read and acknowledge that they're going to follow those requirements.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, it's to have them acknowledge, check boxes as described is good.
Yep, we'll figure out a way to do it. Okay.
If nothing else, it's an item that Kevin, if we don't currently have that capability, you can add it to the list for our CARES funding or for technology.
Yeah, we could try that. We could also put the lethal force allowed signs up and go from there too after we do this.
I think you can send the file as a PDF and then on as an attachment, and then take it in the email, put a box there where they can check that and say, I've read the attachment involved.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to do it, and we'll figure out a way to get that done. So that's a good idea. Yeah.
And maybe signs on our gates to say, crossing the runway is per policy up.
That's true too. Yeah.
You must have two-way, we could even put up a criteria there, but at least it helps drive home the point that the people are just going to walk across or drive across. Need to remind them there is a policy.
Good ideas. Okay. All right. Let's see, new business. We've already basically hit taxi designations unless somebody has another idea. I suggested the path forward is to rent a grinder, grind off the X's, continue to pursue the viable approach we're going to take to deal with getting taxi painted on there and report on that, unless we stumble into something that's really going to work cheap and we can make it happen. So
Taking and getting a hold of somebody who does banners and make a banner for each letter with little cutouts where, you know, when they go and, when you
Yeah, make a mask.
right. Well, not so much even a mask, just something with little cutouts, maybe the size of, you know, a 1/4 inch wide and an inch long, where you just go by with a can and go all those holes are, and it gives you a guide to paint.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen, you know, they do that a lot when they transfer different information. They'll take and put something up there and use some type of a stencil with little cutouts in it where you just kind of follow the dots to get your whatever you want. And in this case, it would be one banner for one letter. You'd need 4 banners.
Another way to possibly do it would be to mark key points on the letter in a drone and then snap a chalk line between them.
Yeah, you could do that. Not that sophisticated.
okay.
But Bill, going back to the grinding, so that it sounds like it'd be kind
It's
of
a-
a
it's a-
volunteer work
Yeah,
party.
I think it's a couple $100 a day to rent a concrete grinder that peel these off without too much trouble.
And get kind of some volunteers in a work party. Do it. You propose also then to seal at that time, or that would be a separate?
Well, I think seal is still up in the air how to proceed. Because we'd have to see the area to seal is about 80 by 100 for each letter, each end. And that might be viable, might not, but the past volunteer attempts haven't been really that successful for anything anywhere near that size. So that's my concern.
No, it sounds good. We can start with the grinder.
But I think the grinder is pretty easy, and you just need somebody to get a grinder and bring it back and grind them off and then sweep them up. You know, basically, there's not a lot technically to that.
And a way to dispose it.
Yeah, it just goes in regular, you know, whatever.
As
So that's
far
my
as
thoughts, is go ahead and at least show that effort and
yeah,
and acknowledge that we're working through these other issues to either do it ourselves or contract out, depending on what we feel is appropriate. But my point is not to just ignore it and keep ignoring it. I think that's what got the prior administration in trouble with these guys, is they didn't make any motion forward, and we need to keep kind of picking away at it. And see what we can do.
yeah, absolutely. As far as any action plan to go on with the grinder, who's going to look into that?
Would be your manager.
Yeah, we got a couple people looking into it.
Okay, great.
All right.
And the options for the letters, and it kind of, as Phil mentioned, let's see if the banner type of thing would be an option or in parallel to what, Kevin, you're doing with the professional guys.
Yeah, that was the first time I've heard of some of these creative ideas. I know Glenn had mentioned some time back, thinking of doing it ourselves, but yeah, like I said, we've got some time to figure that out. I've always wondered if there had been no X in there whatsoever, would the inspector have wandered into the airport at all, or the air park at all? But so I think we have some time to figure out the lettering. But the X's are appearing again, and if Chris Brooks is flying by in the Caltrans airplane, and I know he's one who will take the circuitous route back to SAC exec to have a look at airports and along the way. If he sees the X's again, it's just going to be a point of irritation for him. So getting those ground off is step number one.
So probably sooner than later, particularly before it gets real hot out.
Yeah, I think so.
And also, I just didn't add to agree. It needs to look really good to do it, and not only see it from the air, but people driving our streets, potential owners, it can't look like it was, third world stuff. But
well, my
Yeah, we'll talk more about it and try to get it to where the blades are just, like a cheese grater taking the stripe off and not asphalt. And probably do it in a rectangle pattern rather than an X, so that it doesn't look like you just pulled off an X. You do a full square and then fill that real quick.
Yeah, I think the grinders will work fine. They're set for, I think they'll take like an 1/8 inch or something off, and they're for smoothing concrete. So I think that would work okay. A little tweaking.
Yeah, then I said the letters, when we do paint the taxi, it's got to look really good.
Yeah, and you got to make sure somebody can spell it before you turn them loose.
Get some of our English majors and teachers to check it before.
So I think the answer is to continue developing the ceiling black backing or whatever we're going to do, and then the banner idea or drones and chalk lines or something to work on doing it ourselves in parallel with. We have a price, we know what that costs, we have a contractor, but if we don't have to spend that much doing this, that would be nice. So, and I think we could, in our report to Caltrans prior to the next inspection, we can report, well, we've done all this stuff, and I think that's sufficient for the moment. Show progress. So. All right, let me get this one going here. Get rid of this one. That. This smaller. There we go. Okay. So should have a public meeting topics, 2 pages sticking up there.
Got it.
So the question keeps coming up that we've been talking about budget and fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going on 18 months or so ago, we did the workshop, which was kind of a freewheeling, what do you want the airport to ever become? And subsequent to that, I think our change is that it's not that open anymore. We need to discuss the realities of long-term survival and what that means, and some necessary capital projects, and then the streets. So the idea is we would have another meeting or a couple of public meetings to discuss various topics and raise various issues and propose some things, food for thought type things for them to do. So in order to do that, I'm considering this as some ideas for what this public meeting ought to look like, and some basic statements. Now, the mood I was in when I did this was largely very negative, and I don't know if we want to be very negative or not, but I think we want to be fairly concise and realistic and not a whole lot of detail, I think is kind of the theme behind this. So these are simply topics to consider. So we make statements essentially that we're not financially viable for the long term. We've been lucky, and stimulus funds are basically made this year whole and next year possible. Without those, we would have been severely limited in what we could do. But we do need the residents' support, and we need their input on what they want this to be. My perception is we have a group that doesn't want us, doesn't care, is negative about anything we do. So that's that group. We have the largest number group we don't hear from. So we really don't know what their interest is one way or the other. And then we have a rising or a group of dedicated people that want to see the district get better and also support the airplane part of it. So we've got, I see 3 main groups within this district, and we're certainly not all together one way or the other, but we need to solicit and listen to those other people if we can get them to show up. Find out what it is that bugs them, what do they want, what don't they want, and we can factor that in. I think we need to report very clearly our current needs. We need to report that almost everything we got is past end of life and just hanging on by a thread, or does not comply with current requirements or something. and discuss some of the impacts when they quit, which they may quit without notice because of their age. Again, a very simple, only 5 or 6 things, a simple chart. I don't know, you know, we have to develop that part. I'm asking for input on, is this the theme to follow? And then we can develop the PowerPoint, look at it next time. So I see the current needs as the long-term airport staffing or support. Currently, we've got a full-time paid manager and the equivalent of a full-time equivalent person in volunteer effort to keep us where we're at. So I believe the past years where things got out of control and we lost night ops was a period of time where we had a full-time paid manager that did not have the volunteer support. And so we essentially were understaffed and everything basically got away from us. So we have to figure out what to do about that. Because the volunteers that are currently there can disappear at any time for any reason. And then what? And I think we need to try to convey, given the current situation we're in, don't underestimate what it takes to run this place. We're like a little mini service district, but Cameron Park Service District has like 10 or 15 staff. We got nothing. So we have to fill out the same forms and keep the same regulators happy as they do. So don't lose sight of that. Somehow we need to convey that, I think. Maintain, we have, one of the other main goals is day and night operating permit. We need to, that's our lifeblood if we want to keep an airport here. So obstruction mitigation has to continue. We've got to chase down anything that comes up on the inspection reports in a very timely manner. Right now it's the obstructions in Boeing. And we got to maintain airport lighting, plaza, and the other essential parts of the airport to maintain our operating permit. Fuel sales, I think, are critical to this airport and most any airports to remain viable. So we've got an obsolete credit card reader that's about to that will fail and has to rely on parts salvaged from other readers to be fixed. We're aware of the underground tank situation, and we've started that with the RFP, but we don't yet have a way. We don't yet know the real amount, and we don't have any way to pay for it as we get to the point of actually doing something. We got to keep the airport cleaned up and mowed. It was hit pretty hard in the inspection 2 years ago for overgrowth and a lot of other issues, and it's really nice now. I mean, it really looks good. We got to keep it that way, and we got to keep Cal Fire happy by keeping the edges trimmed and all this kind of stuff. We've got some maintenance. The culvert barricades are falling apart again. Somehow we got to figure out how to clean this drainage, or we're going to get stuck with a flood or a bunch of issues with that. There's a fight over who has to do it, but we got to figure out what we need to do. And we need reliable, effective, I would say, equipment in general. We need stuff we can put to use, and it'll keep working.
Hey, Burl, this is Mike.
Yeah.
Kevin reached out to me the other day and about the mower deck. And I told him that I would come get it and sharpen the blades again.
Okay.
But my shoulder is starting to work, so I can get back to mowing again.
Okay. Well, we got a new thing to pull it with too, so we can train you and turn you loose.
So I'll get back to doing that. I'm to the point where I can probably do that now.
We also have a set of new blades. We might just do a blade swap and then sharpen these in the backup, whatever.
Okay, I can do that because I have a lift over here that I can lift it so we can get underneath it to do it.
Yeah, well, you know, we were talking today and we did buy a new set of blades, so we might just do a blade swap and then sharpen the other ones for the next.
That's easy. I can swap the blades and then just sharpen the other ones whenever. Look
All
back
right.
to the shed.
Okay, good. Kevin will seek you out. We don't right now have a capital improvement plan or any sort of a real plan in place for airport pavement maintenance, which we need, and we've got to get going on it because the last slurry coat is aging, and there's some prep things we've got to get in play for getting grants or whatever we're going to do to support airport pavement. We have a few years, but not that many years, depending on how this slurry holds up. We've got some other existing infrastructure that needs some immediate work. The curtain type hangar doors or needs new rollers and stuff. They're getting where you can't even open or close them. Some of the cable guides and the wear on the cables is of concern on the powered hangar doors that need to be addressed. Tie down chains need to be swapped out, and gate controls are a continuing and growing headache to deal with those. So this is kind of what came out. So we need to shrink the list down to 4 or 5 things, like one slide of existing infrastructure. One, that's what I'm thinking. So this whole talk would consist of 7 or 8 slides, and that's it. Otherwise we lose the audience. So I'm trying to shrink it down. So if I miss something or need to do something different, that's what we're here for. And then there needs to be funds to maintain the residential streets, or realize that you're going to be paying a bond or a loan when they fail down the road, in some years down the road, including gutters. So that's my thought. And then as far as when to do this, as things get loosening up, it would be ideal if we could do it publicly, but I don't know what the state's going to do after mid-June. They're saying they're going to move out of the tiered system, but I think we got to be a little cautious to plan on a face-to-face until it's really solid. So I'm thinking maybe near the end of June or so, we pick a day and a time and do one of these and see what we get. I think that's a rough time frame.
Hey, Burl, can I go back for a minute? When you were talking back here, you were talking about the people on the airport that aren't pilots and getting them involved, or finding out what they want or they need or what we need.
Yeah.
Sitting here thinking about something. When we did, or when you did, the little get together up by the gate about getting the proposition to go through. There was what, 40 people there maybe?
We get 40, 45. That's my guess as the core support group number.
Okay. Here's my point. So when we did the thank you at Becker's house, there was 40 or 50 people there.
We got more there, yeah.
Okay, but you go look at these Zoom meetings, there's 10 or 12.
Correct.
What if we reached out to the non-aviators in the airport and did something like that one Friday night this summer? Whatever, invite them to a pizza party. I don't care. We'll do it in my backyard if you want. And so we can sit down face to face, very casually, and say, look, you guys moved on to an airport. You're not pilots. That's great. That's not a problem. What do you expect? What are you looking for? What are you willing to do to help us? And I use as an example, my neighbor, Jason. Just by reaching out to him, look what we did in one 10-minute conversation.
Yep. Well, the question is how to reach out to him, other than, I think the only way is to go door to door, because
you tell me when and what, and I'll make up a flyer and I'll go put it on their doorsteps. I got a golf cart.
Okay.
I think the problem is, not a problem. Let me rephrase it. I think the issue is not that they're not aviators, not that they're not interested in the airport. They're just not involved because it's not what they do. And so they don't maybe realize what else is going on around here. I mean, in all honesty, when the thing came up years ago down here on Cameron Park Drive to put in the dog park, and I've been a dog owner my whole life, I didn't pay any attention to it because I don't take my dog to dog parks. But if somebody would have come and knocked on my door and said, hey, we noticed you got a dog, can we talk to you? I'd have listened. And it might just be a casual way to get people together and maybe get them more in tune to what actually is going on here. Because I'll tell you, I've lived here 12 years, and until I decided to get a little bit more educated about what's going on here, I was clueless. I'll tell you straight up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Mike, I think you said it's a very good point. I think we have seen it in the Measure P stuff and in the other events. We do get a fair amount of the non-aviators that come there who just, it seems most of them kind of want to associate with the pilots.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And
look at Danny across the street. He's not a pilot.
Yeah.
But he's running FOCA for us.
Yeah. But well, he's actually a pilot. He doesn't have an airplane now, as I understand.
Well, he doesn't actually have a pilot's license either.
Oh, well, other than that detail, but
Details.
anyway,
Okay, I agree. So we ought to make it a fun thing, and we ought to, and I think it needs to be, you didn't mention it, but you brought up FOCA. I think it needs to be separate and distinct from FOCA. It needs to be,
Absolutely.
needs to be an independent thing, and
It can stand on its own.
And I think this public meeting topic thing can be directed towards the non-involved to try to get them involved, I think, is the other theme to consider.
and
Exactly.
and that's part of the messaging is to get people to come there. And going back to your tone on the, what you're talking about, bro, I think in the tone, I don't think we should sugarcoat it. Let's not leave false impressions of where we are. This is our district. And the message part is the county's not going to come in and save us.
No, the county's going to come in and make it a storage yard.
Yeah, or other things going on now, but this is, our future is up to us. Nobody's going to come in. We're never going to convince the county to subsidize our lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think the idea of pizza gets them out the door sometimes, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And Terry, you just said something critical. They're not going to help us support our lifestyle. So let's just take, for sake of just for sake of discussion, let's take all the airplanes out of this air park and put hot rods in every one of these hangars. They're not going to support that lifestyle either. And so the people that have cars, and I'm a car guy, don't get me wrong, I'm a gearhead, so the people that have cars or whatever they have in their hangars that is their enjoyment or pleasure, they need to understand the county's not going to support that lifestyle either. So they need to get involved and get on board and help with this.
I think that's a good point. That's a common thread between the non-aviators and the aviators using the airport, that if the airport doesn't exist, nobody's going to come in and subsidize the 100-foot wide streets for the people who stay behind.
That's right.
And the streets are expensive. That's the reality.
Okay.
And I just don't think we should sugarcoat it. We can't say doom and gloom, but you do something to get people to realize this is not an automatic thing, that our lifestyle is going to exist. If you don't do anything, we don't pay the fees and stuff, this can go away. And what we're seeing is we've been lucky, with the CARES Act.
Yeah, and other things. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's part of the message. It's our future is up to us.
Good messaging. So I think keep plugging along on this, and we'll shoot for June, July, whenever this thing opens up, so we can actually have a get together without the COVID thing necessarily being as severe as it is. Although a lot of people show up without doing anything about it, but I think we should be conscious of that if we sponsor something.
We can have something maybe in front of us, somebody's hangar outside, and everybody.
Well, I like the ones we did. I think those were good places and good locations, and they got visibility. People drove by and said, "What are you doing? Come here, have some pizza."
Exactly. I think it was a great way to get a message out.
And you may want to do it, 2 times a month apart, just so you catch people who may be taking trips and something.
Sure.
Like that.
Well, you do a few. Okay, so all right. So we'll work on we have to have something to hand out or something to talk to, and we need some data and details. So I think these topics we can develop into that, but it has to be really short and succinct,
I think too, whenever it's appropriate to do so, we should walk around and visit every property, maybe 2 people or something like that. And I think people will open up more about what they really want from the district. And
I think door to door is
once we can do that, I guess.
Okay. I don't know what else to do. I mean, we did.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that's how
flyers, we did postings at the front gate, and then we get 40 or 50, which is actually not a bad turnout, but I see the same 40 or 50 at all of these things.
Yeah.
I have not been able to reach the 200 that are out there that we don't reach for some reason. So
So I
The
think
one
what you
thing I
guys
would
are
like us
saying
to-
is key, right? Is we've got to get people involved and disseminate the information so that they have the information necessary to understand what's going on.
right.
And is it worth, we've got the infrastructure and finance committee, right? Should
Yep.
we form another committee that is focused on communicating with everybody? Because it is super important, right? And I think it needs to be multi-pronged, right? Not just a public thing. Like kind of like I said before, the emails that go out from Kevin on that Survey Monkey kind of thing, right? You could put out surveys and ask questions and get feedback from people. That's much easier to get from people than attending a meeting at a certain time on a platform they might not be
No, I
familiar
think that's a good point. And the other part of that thing that came to mind while you were bringing it up is that several times we've been asked to like do a newsletter or something, and who wants to sit and write a newsletter? But maybe if it's done as a committee or something, it would be a lot less painful to generate that thing. So that could
and
be
be
another
multi-pronged
output of that, you know.
because different generations communicate differently.
Correct.
Right? And we've got multiple generations here, right? So multi-pronged, figure out different ways to communicate.
That's a great point, Jim. That is because, you look at, I mean, we've got, Cody down the street that's what, 30 years old. And, we've got
Right.
across the street from me that are pushing 80. So that's a great point because a lot of people don't communicate the way you and I probably do on a computer on a daily basis.
Right. Right.
All right, cool. Yeah.
One more little thing that I thought I'd bring up. The show and shine is September 18th, it looks like, and that's the same weekend as Reno, just so everybody knows.
Yep, we suggested alternatives to it, but by the time they even asked us, it was already set.
Just one on your information or material you're working on here, Burl. I think it's one thing I've come to realize is how much operating cost we would save by renewing our infrastructure, right? Just looking at what we did today, right? That would be completely removed if we had the fuel system we talked about and the phone lines we need. I mean, it's so old that we are paying for things that nobody does anymore, right? And therefore it's expensive.
Right. So where do you go find a 1200 baud modem when this one burns up?
Call Alex.
Yeah, they might have one. All right. Well, it's a work in progress, but these are some really helpful inputs and how to change the course here somehow or another. I think that's if we could ever get a kind of this residential area pulling more together, a whole lot would be accomplished just in doing that, whatever it is. All right. Keep your ideas flowing. Okay, so public meeting, good stuff. The electric golf cart is now surplus. We have a replacement. So anybody that needs a new golf cart, tenderly taken care of, and a really great charger to go with it, let us know. We'll put it on we'll go through the process to surplus it. All right. So the next two, it's 9 o'clock. I don't know if you guys want to keep going or we can table these for next time. I leave it to the board. But we've got some document inputs came out of the training that need to be vetted by the board before we can put them in the document book. And I'm kind of inclined to wait on those unless you want to go through It'll take about another half hour or so, probably. But given the late hour, I would suggest we can,
Yeah, maybe we probably make it a better review if we wait. I mean, I have several, more Nick comments on it.
so.
But maybe get a better result if we wait.
So I would suggest we postpone these to next meeting. I mean, it's not critical. We have a document, it's in play. These resolve some definitions that were missing and some clarifications that came up in discussing them during training. So they're not major needed changes at the moment. I think we can push them out and not lose anything. Unless somebody's desperate to read the rules of order again tonight.
That might fix my insomnia.
Yeah. It might. Well, if you want to.
One's 12 pages and the other's 9 pages, but
I would vote for table.
yeah, well, tabling's indefinite. I think we just postpone it. Yeah, per the procedure that we're going to be reviewing, tabling's indefinite, and we're talking about is not indefinite.
Yeah,
I just
well, we'll pass on them for tonight and pick them up next time. So. Well, good meeting. Lots of good ideas, guys. Appreciate it. This is why we do this, and I'm trying to do it this way so that we get these other ideas. And we'll chew on them and go forward. So anything else, last discussion on anything, or we're good? So.
I think it was a good meeting. I think particularly the discussion we just had on the public meetings was really good.
All right. So I motion for an adjournment then.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. So thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
We're adjourning at 9:07.
9:07 I've got here. Yeah,
9:07.
that's enough.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, Burl.
Blue
See you
skies.
guys later.